So today we're going to talk about what men consider great sex, and we're going to give you a detailed breakdown. So hold on your horses a little bit because this is a conversation from men talking about sex. Okay. So really quickly, it just occurred to me, or not doesn't occur to me, but it's stated that roughly about 50% of divorces cite sex and intimacy as the problem in their relationship. So I think this is a very serious topic to cover, both for those of you who are single looking for love and those of you who are in a relationship. And what's interesting, I was in my men's group a few weeks back, and I believe there were 5 married men, 2 men that are, 1 man in a long-term significant relationship, and 1 man that's in a relatively new relationship. I think it's been about 9 to 10 months. I guess that's not that new. And I bring up the topic of sex all the time. I think maybe it's just my personality. I do it for my content that I create, but I ask the men how often they have sex in their relationship. And the married men, interestingly enough, sadly, it's very limited. With one couple who has regular sex, for them, it's about once a week. Some of the couples who haven't had sex in many, many months. One man openly admitted he is totally stressed out in his professional life right now. And he's just not in the mood for sex. And even the one that's been in a significant relationship, but they're not married, they're barely having sex. And then the new couple are having sex all the time. So I decided to ask these guys, okay, what do they think is great sex? Now, we have to recognize that there's kind of an interesting dichotomy going on here because typically in the dating realm, men have sex on the brain, right? We men have sex on the brain. I have sex on the brain. In other words, it's part of my decision-making process when it comes to even considering commitment with someone. In fact, this is kind of tricky because I know a lot of people prefer to wait for marriage to be physically intimate. And yet what I've observed in the dating marketplace these days is having physical intimacy with someone is part of the decision-making process to whether or not someone will have sex, or the decision-making process as to who they would most likely commit to. So unlike in the past, if you wanted to get laid, those men had to get married. These days, if you want commitment, you have to have sex. Now, I said the word have to. I don't mean it that it's an absolute. I just mean it's part of the process. So before we talk about what men want, let's talk about women for a moment. You know, I've heard from so many of you, men are crappy lovers. A lot of men are selfish lovers. Men are bad in the bedroom. Men don't give oral sex. And of course, the thing I hear most is men have ED. I hear this frequently for those of you who are in midlife. And midlife, what I always say is after baby making years and before retirement. So my audience is predominantly between the ages of 42 and 69. And I hear from so many women in their 50s and 60s how frustrated they are with their sex life when it comes to being with men, because it's just a fact of life. Our body changes, just like your body changes. By the way, what's the color of this shirt? It's blue. Well, blue and black and white. But I'm going to say, just like blue in this shirt, I have to take a blue pill. A lot of men have to take a blue pill. And I just had my testosterone checked out, and it's actually it's right in the middle. So it's not the testosterone issue. It's just as we age, as our blood doesn't pump through our body the same. This is part of the issues. Now, ladies, I recognize you have some of your own issues that you might be concerned that you don't lubricate, or it's not as lubricated as you were before. Some men complain that women just lay there. Some men say women are hard to please. I'm going to repeat that: hard to please, hard to please, hard to please. Some women are either also bitter and jaded when it comes to sex. And then I hear stories how both masturbation for men and women actually affects their sex life, how pornography for men deeply affects their capacity to feel physical intimacy with someone because they're so used to their gorilla grip, if you will. And I've now recently heard that when with women with vibrators, could that I don't know if there's studies been done. I was just speaking to somebody about this, so don't quote me on this, but that actually can affect their ability to experience pleasure. So there's a lot of factors that are in play when it comes to sex and physical or emotion, or excuse me, sex and intimacy. Now, I just started to say emotional intimacy because earlier when I said roughly 50% of divorces cite sex, and actual intimacy is the primary reason why they got divorced. I believe money is up there as well. Like those are the top two things that cause divorce. But we're talking about intimacy. It's not just the physical act of sex, it's the emotional connection that we create with another human being. So it occurs to me that for those of you who are single and looking for love, this is a radically important conversation to be talking about. And so I want to invite everyone really quickly. There is a book by Doctors John and Julie Gottman called 8 Dates. Now, this the top says Essential Conversations for Lifetime of Love. Now, if you're not familiar with this book, there's a link below to get all the books I recommend in the show notes. It says Jonathon Recommend Books. Okay, I'm going to turn to chapter 4, which is about love and sex. And what this is it's about having conversations about physical intimacy if two people are going to engage in it, rather than burying our heads in the sand. Rather than being naive to it, I'm a big proponent of couples actually talking about physical intimacy, even though it's a radically tough conversation. And what's interesting, they offer some open-ended questions you may want to consider talking about before you become physically intimate with someone, or right around the time you're physically intimate with each other. So here's a couple of the questions listed. Okay. Think about all the times we've had sex. What are some of your favorites? What about the time what made it your favorite? So this is obviously for couples who are been in relationship for a little bit, the first question. The next question is, what turns you on? There's almost this grand expectation. I swear this seems to happen. There's this expectation that if a person doesn't know what turns you on, they are a bad lover. When you could simply say, hey, if you move your hand this way and turn your elbow this way and move your neck this way, it would be exactly what I need. Why is it we're not asking those questions, maybe even before physical intimacy? By the way, I know I made a generalized statement there, but it occurs to me that most everybody seems to have an expectation that the other person is supposed to be a good lover without actually looking at their own capacity to be a good lover. And then some people have an egoic perspective of them being a good lover. But so why not ask the question, what turns you on? Here's another great question. How can I enhance our passion? How can I enhance our passion? What's your favorite way for me to let you know you want to have sex? What's your favorite way for me to let you know you want to have sex? These are great questions. Where and how do you like to be touched? Where and how do you like to be touched? So there's more to it, but I highly recommend this is a great conversation starter book to help couples get closely more emotional intimacy with one another. But Jonathon, this sounds like you're interviewing, or this sounds like it's too forced. Folks, we need to be grown-ups today. Let me repeat that. We need to be grown-ups. Stop expecting some sort of James Bond kind of lover out there. Or I was just watching a movie with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They get in this gigantic fight, and through that they find their passion, and they make love, or well, you don't see that part. But James Bond doesn't exist. Angelina Jolie is a movie star, kind of thing. It's not like pornography. It's funny. Pornography is always, in my mind, pornography is this. He goes down on her, she goes down on him. They have sex upside down, they have sex sideways, and that's basically making love. Well, that's not true lovemaking. So I'm encouraging everyone to have deeper conversations when they're in the beginning stages of a relationship. Ask the questions that's listed in this book. And you might find that you can build deeper intimacy with one another. And I'm in a moment, I'm going to share what men consider great sex, and I'll give you the breakdown. But I want to recommend another book for everybody. If you haven't read the book Emotional Intimacy by Robert Masters, I highly recommend both you and the guy reading this book together. And let me tell you why. Physical intimacy is to some degree an act of pleasure, okay? What really enhances pleasure is a true, genuine emotional connection with another human being. That enhances the pleasure. That takes it to a whole nother stratosphere, okay? So I've heard this. Okay, I'm going to share something personal with you, but I was a player back in the day. I was an unconscious person. I was driven by the testosterone, and that's, you had to spread your seed. I was an emotionally unconscious person. But I recognize now that I want a heart on to go with my hard on. Let me repeat that. I want a heart on to go with my hard on. And many men actually do feel the same. They just haven't been in an environment where they feel safe about this. And just like, emotional safety, to talk about, like, look, and I openly admit I have to take a blue pill. I don't think that's a big deal. For some men, that could be a gigantic deal. Just like for some women, how they feel about their body can affect how they physically interact with a man. So I'm a big proponent of having these kind of conversations sooner rather than later. Build the emotional intimacy with someone, so then when you're having physical intimacy, it just enhances everything. Okay. So I know this topic is what men can consider great sex. I think to some degree, this might be interchangeable. It might not. I'm sure women have their own expectations around sex. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But let me share with you what the group of men, this was the general consensus I got from talking to, I think it was 7, 8 guys, okay, over the course of the last few months, asking them about their sex life and what they thought was great sex. So to some degree, this is just purely my own research, okay, that I can't speak for every man out there, but this feels like a kind of a good generalization. So number one, most men want sex on their timeline. They want it on their timeline. What they basically said is, we want an agreeable partner, somebody that when you say, hey, let's go and have a quickie, they're like, okay, I'm game. Or, hey, let's go take an evening off and make mad love with each other, I'm game. What they want is it on their timetable. But more importantly, what they're really saying is they want an agreeable partner. It's not like you're pulling teeth. It's not like you're having to beg for it. Now, I know some of you ladies have said the exact same thing to me about men, that you've had to like beg the guys to have sex with. Well, yeah, a lot of men are stressed out. Their testosterone is a bare minimum. I mean, they're usually, I would say they're either, just like women might feel embarrassed not being lubricated enough. Although there's a great product out there, by the way, called Uber Lube on Amazon. If you haven't used it, some people use coconut and other types of forms of lube. But, oh, God, I went off a tangent there for a second. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought, folks. I do that on occasion. That's why I shouldn't interrupt my guests when I interview. I know some of you complain. I just have this capacity to go on tangents. I'm trying to get better at that. But coming back to agreeable partner, okay? And that may not be as important to you ladies, but I know for men, that is a gigantic, important desire most men have, is an agreeable partner on their timeline. Number two, this is going to feel uncomfortable for me to share this, but this is something all the men said the same, was they want to have a blowjob to completion. A blowjob to completion. Okay, oral sex okay, just let's get clear. As men age, for some men, it could take forever for them to get off. Okay. Just like for a lot of women, oral sex could be the same thing. And I know many of you ladies are frustrated because men aren't giving oral sex, or they don't stay down there long enough to completion. Well, what men consider great sex is a woman who will go till completion. Hey, look at, I think that's a desire. I think that's a natural desire for both men and women alike, is when oral sex is performed, that it goes to completion, or at least there's a willingness to go completion. And some of you might be saying, well, Jonathan, I've been down here forever and the guy is not going off. Like at some point you have to take a break, or just say, hey, is this even going to work for you? But I think that's a desire. But, men also have to take ownership on their part. If they have trouble ejaculating, then they have to be a participant in this process as well. I think, again, having deeper questions with one another will enhance the opportunity of having great sex for the two of you. By the way, Debbie says, does Uber Lube, do they deliver? Again, that's Amazon. They always deliver. Okay. Before I get into the last one, I've got three here. It's interesting when it comes to sex. Many of you know I poo-poo long distance relationships or long distance dating, and for a variety of different reasons, because most people do it from an unconscious place. But what I've observed with a lot of people that have done long distance dating is they actually talk about sex quite a bit. They talk about sex quite a bit. They oftentimes have phone sex. So before they ever meet, this has been a topic of conversation that occurs. So why are we so afraid to do this? It just occurs to me, like the short distance dating, you would never talk about sex beforehand. But if you're doing long distance dating as part of the repertoire of getting to know someone, oftentimes there's phone sex, or there's conversations about sex. And again, I'm just pointing out something that just occurs to me as interesting. Okay, the third thing, what men consider great sex, is most men want to know they pleased you. Most men want to know they pleased you. And what the men said in the group is they said that they want to know that a woman can have both a vaginal and oral orgasm, both a vaginal and oral orgasm. Now, from what I understand, because I can't speak for a woman, is for many women, they need significant foreplay ahead of time to help facilitate that. They need to feel a true connection with the person. Now, some women, biologically speaking, might struggle in those areas. And I think it's important. Here's the thing. And I know women who fake orgasms just to please that partner. I'm just not a fan of that. It's because it's false. It's false intimacy, in my opinion. I think having conversations, talking about what pleases one another, actually helps enhance the process. But men, and I've spoken to women, they feel the same way. They want to know that their partner is pleased. I think when two people genuinely care for one another, you want to know that the other person is pleased. So I'm just here to point out that these are kind of the general things most men think about. And I know you think about the same thing. And I know, ladies, this is a struggle for many people as we age. Our bodies don't operate the same way as they did in our 20s and 30s. So this is why, again, having grown-up conversations, as I discussed earlier, talking about these things, just like what the book points out, might help create more emotional intimacy with your partner, so then you can enhance your physical intimacy. And again, much of what I shared today is generalizations to some degree, but for the most part, it seems pretty consistent. And again, ladies, you have every right to complain about men. Men seem to complain about women. Certainly, biologically speaking, we can't change how our body works. I mean, unless we consciously make choices to enhance those things. And just recognize that this is a very difficult conversation to have with somebody. And again, that's why I recommend the book 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. Again, I'm going to pull out the book because it helps begin the conversation. So maybe if you start off on the right foot, you don't end up like those couples that barely have sex anymore. And for those of us in midlife who are single, I think we'd like to go out with a bang to and have really good regular sex with one another. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if it is. Post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And also, if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There is a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. There is a link to follow me on Instagram, to join my mailing list, to get my dating vows and get all the books I recommend, all listed below.